Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning into Boss Moms. I am so excited to introduce you to my friend Iris Walsh. She is our administrator mommy. I actually met Iris when I was in seventh grade. She was probably one of the first people I became friends with. And I'm just going to let her give you her elevator pitch of who she is, and then we're just going to dig in.
I'm very humble, Aubrey. I'm not really good at talking about myself, but as Aubrey said, I am a mom first, a wife, wife first actually, then a mom, and then my career path is I am a world language chairperson um, for a public school.
Thank you. I know you're like not even trying to give them anything. So one of the reasons I wanted to do this series is because I really just wanted to showcase moms from different generations. And over the next 5 weeks, like you're just gonna meet a bunch of really awesome women. And although Iris is trying to play herself down, like she's actually like super dope. And so we're just gonna like have her like lead us through like what like the late 90s were. Middle school, high school, what that was like, how she decided her career path, like what led her to where she is.
So start now. All right. So as Aubrey mentioned, we met in middle school. And that's actually where I am a chairperson, is at a middle school. And I have to say, Aubrey was the new kid on the block. I had already been in the district, and Aubrey came in as a fresh new face, but I would say a relatable face because looking at us both, we looked a little different. We were in a primarily, Caucasian or white school district, but Aubrey and I actually were just diverse in our friend group. So I just felt like she would be a good fit. And the fact that she was unique in coming from a different place, from St. Vincent, was pretty cool. And I'll admit that her accent really was interesting. And that's probably what kind of broke the ice for us. She came across as a really smart kid, and I like to hang out with like-minded people. Believe it or not, at that young age, who knew, right? So, how did we engage first? I don't even remember. I just remember seeing you
I
in the cafeteria at one
I
point.
think we were in French class together. Like we we had that we had that French teacher where we learned like how to like count in French. Well, we were learning how to count in French, although some of us already knew how. Um, but you spent a whole lot of time talking about me and not about you, girl. So so nice try. Let's flip it again. So talk about I remember actually I'll kind of give you I'll give you a starting point where I remember when we were kind of asked what we wanted to be in that French class. Like I remember you wanting to be a teacher back then, right? And that was something you just kind of stuck to. Like I don't remember, like I feel like you maybe changed the kind of teacher you wanted to be, but like you were like consistent the whole time. And so like talk about how you just kind of knew like that's what you were going to do, and what was some of your inspiration to kind of keep on track for what you wanted to do.
Well, I have to say, school for me was always like a safe haven, a safe place. It's where I could just find adults to kind of nurture me and just make connections with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I find that middle school was actually where I made the most in lifelong connections,
Mm-hmm.
whether that be through friendships or through just staying in touch with teachers. But I can say that at every point, whether it was elementary school, middle school, or high school, that was the teacher that I wanted to be because I was able to find a role model in that regard. So I wanted to be an elementary school teacher because I love kids so much. Then I had a really great math teacher and I wanted to be a math teacher. I had an awesome French teacher, and then I'm like, I want to be a French teacher. I I thought about being a social studies teacher. So that just goes to show. And then I'm like, all right, snap out of it. What are we going to focus on here? And because of my background and my heritage, just being Hispanic, Puerto Rican, and Dominican by heritage, I grew up bilingually. A lot of people tend to ask like, oh, wow, you don't have an accent. So how do you speak Spanish? And it's like, well, I just grew up speaking it. Like my mom is bilingual, so I would just pick a language to speak to her in, spending a lot of time and living with my grandmother who spoke English, but not a lot. I was kind of forced to speak Spanish more often than not. And then just switching between the two languages, like that's just like a thing. So when I did get to middle school and I chose to challenge myself and take French, as opposed to the easy route in taking Spanish, which was a language that I already knew how to speak and understand, not write or read it. That's really where I found a true connection and passion to language, because I was able to relate it to myself, really understand myself better, my own culture, my own heritage, and also make those linguistic connections where like I would be able to express something in French that other kids wouldn't be able to just because of my Spanish background, which was pretty neat. So for me, just intrinsically having that language ability, and unbeknownst to me, like it kind of took off. But I really grew to just be super interested in the French language and the French culture. And I followed that all the way through high school and university.
Weren't you the president of the French Honor Society at some point too?
Yeah, I think I was. And I never actually even took a formal Spanish class until I got to college. So learning how to read and write was literally at the university level, like, and just kind of taking the French, what I knew from that and what I learned, just applying it there as well. So that's how I became interested.
That's pretty cool. So like, do you teach French differently from the way we learn French? Because I feel like when we were learning French, like I had some background in French from, coming from a different country and having had exposure. And they taught French in a more like immersive way than what was happening when I came to seventh grade in New York, right? And I remember like I kind of like stood out in that class where like people thought I could be like, they thought I was a native speaker at some point because of my accent and all of that, but like I really wasn't. I feel like I spent a lot of time saying no, I just kind of like learned some of this stuff already, for most of that class. And so like, have you found that as like a French teacher, now, when you're actually like teaching classes and not doing your administrative duties, do you find yourself duplicating any of the things you kind of like learned French with, or have you just kind of like come up with your own way of doing things, to make sure that like students are actually like learning the language when they're like coming through your classroom?
Well, I think really what you said about immersing kids is really the approach of today's language learning and its execution. From when we grew up, it was kind of going towards what we are today. But really right now, like our goal in language learning and teaching kids about language is not about the language, it's what they can do with the language. So a lot of times we're like, oh, so this is the culture and this is how you would say hello, or this is right now we are immersing our kids as much as we can to be true global citizens, and for them to realize that when they step out into the world that they're going to be able to use their language immediately, and not just like, oh, I heard that and I think I know what they're saying, but just kind of immediately start using it. So this is the nerd in me where like, if we go by, 21st century language learning, culture and communication are just the anchors for language education, as we talk about, the standards of language learning. You can't learn a language without learning the culture. You can't learn a culture without knowing the language that those people speak. They're kind of one and the same. So
yeah,
it's really evolved.
No, I think that's really important to know, right? Because even it's funny because I feel like even English classes, like we're learning that too. Like before, like the focus was so different, whereas like now, even in your English class, you're learning that that language is shaping your culture, if that's the language that we're speaking within that culture too. So like that's pretty awesome.
You have
So
to have perspective. That's
yeah.
really what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And so like I just want to like go back a little bit, cuz you're actually raising your two young sons as bilingual kids, right?
Yep,
how's
trying,
how's
trying to.
how's that been going?
So, as a language educator, I feel like you have to, right? There's so many
Mhm.
people that I come across that are language educators as well that are like, yeah, I speak Italian, but my kids don't speak Italian, or I speak this and my
Mhm.
kids don't do that. I'm like, how is that impossible? So I just did it the same way that I learned it growing up. Like
Mhm.
there was really like no formal education about it. It's just you're just speaking in the language 24/7. Yes, it can be
Mhm.
exhausting, and yes, it's much easier to revert to English. And for me, it's a lot harder because I am the only one that speaks the language. So
Mhm.
it's really me up against the world. Like they hear 99% of their world in English.
Yeah.
Even people that I encounter, I have to like encourage them, like, please speak Spanish to them, you know?
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
if they speak both languages and then they start speaking English, and I just tell them, like, speak Spanish, like, we're not talking English. Um, yeah, it's tricky. With my older guy, it was a lot easier because he was the only one.
Mhm.
And just having more time and dedication to that made it a lot easier. I can say that when he was much younger, around like 3 and 4, he was super
Mhm.
fluent.
Yeah.
But again, that English influence, once he got to school and as he's
Mhm.
growing, it's just ever present in his everyday. So now he understands everything. He speaks to me in Spanish, but it's a lot more Spanglish.
Mhm.
He knows the words, but just opts to use them in English. And then sometimes things get messed up and I'll have to correct him constantly, but it is what it is. And then the younger guy, because he is 3, but again, now it's someone else speaking in English.
Mhm.
He's actually probably the most difficult. I call him my anti-linguist because he understands everything that I tell him in Spanish, but he opts to use English. Um,
Mhm.
and then if I have him repeat it, he won't, or he'll just finish my sentence and not really say like the whole thing.
Mhm.
So he's a difficult one. That being one of many things. But yeah.
Well, let's call him a
Trying.
free spirit.
I like
Because
that.
we don't need him to get any more autonomous than he already is.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's really awesome. So something I don't know if you remember that I know this, but I remember when you were working on your administrator certifications, you you were writing this paper on the impact of learning multiple languages on like the development of children.
Mhm.
Do you remember telling me about that?
Yeah. At university, yeah. For my
Yeah.
post grad,
So
yeah.
like can you talk a little bit about that? Like what you learned like doing that research? And maybe you could tell us like when you plan on doing your PhD as well. Just kind of put you
I
on the
was just
spot.
gonna say this is obvious plug to do other things. Um, so as I mentioned, language is my jam. So it's super interesting to me to really understand the whole development of language and how it begins and how that kind of
Mhm.
progresses. So we know that those critical periods are before the age of 7. That's where language learning happens the
Mhm.
most and the best and really lifelong. So if kids are able to get that right from the womb, and in those early years of language development, their brains are literally sponges. And
Mhm.
us as adults, we it may be indirectly, but it's kind of discouraged to speak multiple languages, particularly
Yeah.
I think really in the US, because
Mhm.
everywhere else in the world people speak multiple languages, and learn them all at different points. And it's encouraged. But a lot of times adults will say, oh, the kid's confused, or what they're speaking, they don't know the difference between it. And that is completely untrue. It's the adult who's the one that's mistaken and doesn't understand. The child knows exactly how to make those connections with the languages that they're speaking, because it's grammatically correct. They're making, those agreements in both languages, and they're able to express themselves. It's just perhaps one language just took precedence in that moment over another one. So at no point are kids ever confused with the language that they're speaking. It's the adults ultimately are the ones that are confused. And I can see that all the time, like even with my own kids, where I can ask my older guy what that word was that he just used in English, and he knows exactly what it was. But when you look at the whole sentence or whatever he was trying to express, it all aligns in both languages. So really, it's super intelligent for them to be able to do something like that, to be able to make those language agreements, because I don't know, it's just a really neat thing, a really cool phenomenon that happens.
I actually, like, for me, like, I remember when I started teaching at Brooklyn College, like my first semester, just talking about like how like younger people can like make connections quicker than like people who may have like been on the planet longer, right? Or and what I remembered was we had a curriculum, and I didn't want to use the curriculum because I felt like the stuff was too easy. I was like, oh, I read these passages when like I was in 10th grade. So like I didn't think it was appropriate for freshman college kids to read them. And so I went and found like probably one of the most difficult texts I could ever find in my entire life, which is probably why I have poor rate my professor ratings. But we actually ended up working on a text by Gloria Anzaldúa. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but Gloria Anzaldúa, she's this Chicana professor woman who she ended up like writing about her experiences as a young person, growing up in Texas and then in Arizona, and how like consistently speaking Mexican, Spanish, and English like simultaneously, right? And so she actually writes her book like that, where it's like she doesn't bother to translate anything for you. She just kind of throws it in there, almost in the same way that like one of your sons will just kind of like throw the Spanish word in, or that to like almost to like satisfy your need for them to speak Spanish, but also but like as simply as they could. And something she talks about is how she can't separate her identity from her language. Like her language is so a part of who she is, and so like she pushes the boundaries when she's writing this. I think it's like late 80s, early 90s when she writes her book Borderlands. And imagine like
that was like that was the time in this country that languages were really, or bilingualism or just multilingualism was really looked down upon and discouraged.
Yeah.
I can name like just 3 people off the cuff that were just as adults to their children were told like, oh, you can only speak English to your kids, and that's how language kind of died in whatever culture.
No, it's like super common, and like that's something she talks about too, like and it's on the flip side, like we also read like Amy Tan, and she and she's a Chinese American author, who she talks about her mom's experiences and how like because she had a Chinese accent, like she wasn't treated properly, even if she could like articulate herself well enough. It wasn't until like her daughter would get on the phone and speak like perfect American English that they would like show her some respect, right? Did you find that, like, growing up as a kid, did you find yourself ever having to do that, or like because your mom was bilingual, you didn't ever have to do that kind of thing?
Not so much in my own family, but definitely like in school with other kids that came into school,
Mm-hmm.
just speaking Spanish only. So
Yeah.
at the time, I kind of was resentful because of it. And I'm like, why they always gotta pick me? Like, doesn't somebody else right here speak Spanish? Like, leave me alone. I'm trying to do um, but now I realize that that actually framed who I am. So now it's I can't even go to the store, and if I see somebody struggling, I'm like, I can help you,
Mm-hmm.
or what do you need? Or so it's like, it was a blessing at the time that I didn't realize.
Yeah, because you were getting practice too,
Second nature.
right? Like, like as a translator. Um,
Yeah.
so like, I want to like segue, I want to segue into the work that you do, right? And so, as an administrator, you're not just like teaching courses at your middle school. You're also like training and developing teachers with, that's like under your umbrella. And so like, talk a little bit about what that's like. Please slip in that story about how you like, use all the different languages in your department, because that's a fun story. But talk a little bit about like how that has been. Maybe start with like how you even came into that role. Because like that's a good story. You should talk about
Okay.
that.
Um, so I've just always been a motivated person, just looking outside of myself and realizing maybe just the life lessons I could say, or the
Hmm.
mistakes, or just the things that other people do that I knew for myself that I should avoid or
Yeah.
try differently. I was blessed in many ways growing up, and then in other areas, it was a struggle. So I had to learn fast, and I had to be really goal oriented because of that, because I
Hmm.
knew if I didn't do what I needed to do, then I wouldn't achieve all the things that I needed to. And that could have gone the other way, right? Like
Hmm.
could have went negatively. So because of that, I knew that I was going to pursue whatever it was that I was going to
Hmm.
pursue. And then once I realized that it was going to be education, I knew that that was my end goal.
Hmm.
So just kind of fast forwarding middle school, high school, went to university, blah, blah, blah. Now in the current role that I am in, I landed a teaching job by chance. I graduated mid-year at university in January of 2007. And then from there, I just put in my resume for a district that was hiring. And it just so happened that they had a mid-year retirement, and I was able to land that job. So when you do land a job like that, you think like, this is it. I'm going to be here forever. It's amazing. But again, change is good, and change is necessary. And I'm not like a stagnant person. If you just look at me on an everyday basis, I don't sit still. So I knew that I wasn't just going to remain as a
Hmm.
teacher. Ultimately, I wanted to, just kind of move my career path forward.
Yeah.
So I knew that I wanted to become an administrator in the sense of having a larger impact on others.
Hmm.
And I found myself in my teaching role just taking that on as a leader within the department, where whoever it was would just look to me, whether that was my colleagues, whether that was other administrators, or just outside people just looking to me for different things.
Hmm.
I'm like, I know, like I can do this. And I was definitely encouraged, by my groups of people,
Yeah.
you should do this. So yes, I did pursue, postgraduate studies in school building and school district leadership. And that in and of itself was a sacrifice. That took a very long time. It was about 3 years worth of
Mm.
just post grad stuff. Um, so when I landed in this role, as I mentioned before, like you get into your first school district and you think that that's going to be your forever place, right?
Hmm.
So I did apply to a few positions within my own school district, and I wasn't accepted. And of course it stings because you're like really
Hmm.
vested, and you're like, oh my gosh, like how could this be? Um,
Hmm.
but when one door closes, a window opens over there, right? So again, I'm being ambitious and not really ever taking no for an answer for myself, because I know what I want and where I would like to be. I did seek outside of that, right? And sometimes, like I mentioned, change is different. It's necessary, and of course, it's uncomfortable, but you got to do it. So it just so happened that one of my coworkers from my first school district sent me this posting, and I was like, "Oh, you sure? I don't know." And he's like, "Just go for it." I'm like, "It's perfect, but it's just so far. It's, everything that I want, but the commute is going to kill me." And then at this point, it was like right when COVID started. So I was like, oh my goodness, but whatever. I applied. I seemed to tick all the buttons, right, for what they were looking for. And I interviewed on Zoom. That was interesting. Demo on Zoom, and the rest is history. So I will be forever grateful for the fact that they took a chance on me, knowing that I was a quote unquote newbie, right?
Yeah.
And didn't have experience. So that's really cool. But now, my current role, this is my 5th year here actually. And it's different. I enjoy it because obviously I'm still in teaching, and that was one thing that I wasn't sure I'd be ready to give up at the point that I was seeking other opportunities, because I really do love kids and teaching and just exuding my passion for language. So the fact that I am still able to teach 3 classes is really cool. The fact that it's at a middle school, which is my niche, or my niche, is amazing as well. And then just having that larger impact on others. So I supervise 10 teachers, from the most veteran to the newest people, as we started this kind of commentary with. And I think my approach to that is leading by example, right? You never ask anyone to do anything that you wouldn't do or you haven't done yourself. And just modeling that and instilling that in others, and that same gusto and just excitement and passion for, and just leading them by that kind of goes a long way. You want to get their buy-in and let them see, and you show them that you are really vested in them, vested in the process, vested in their understanding and education, as well as their impact ultimately, which is on kids. I always tell them, like, from the newest to the most veteran, like, my job here is never like an I got you moment. My job here is to really push you forward and let you see the potential in yourself, where maybe you might not see it, or maybe you just need that extra push. But it's showing them that, like, look, I'm on this podcast right now, and I'll go in on Monday or my next department meeting and say, hey guys, look what I did. And they're like, what? Or being on an executive board, or just saying, look at this new thing I tried in the classroom, and see if it works for you. But really just kind of sending the message that, like, their success is my success, and their failures are mine, because if they're doing something that wasn't successful, then that's on me. Because I didn't show them, maybe I didn't guide them, or I didn't do something. So I really take those things to heart, and just kind of leading them by that buy-in, and showing them that I truly, deeply care about everything that is their profession.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, I remember when I was teaching at like the university, like my department chair was like that. It was kind of like, okay, like, I think you could do this. Like, I remember when they asked me to teach like hybrid courses. I think it was like, I think it was like 2015. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I was like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. One second.
Okay.
G, por favor. Ábrelo. Okay. Pónselo, por favor. G, ya yo te dije. Gracias. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
We got through
it's
half
actually,
an hour.
No, it's perfect. I'm surprised it didn't come before. No, that was actually perfect because you just slipped into Spanish. So you guys know, like, she's legit, like she's not just out here talking trash. Um,
Oh my god.
did you see that perfect execution? Like, wait a minute, Abria, and but I was talking about, kind of my experience with my own department chair. Like, that was something I really loved about her, was like, there would be times where I'd be telling her, oh, I don't know if I could teach next semester. Like, I feel like I was doing that like the entire time I was there. And somehow I managed to like be there for 10 years.
Mhm.
um, you know, but, but I remember when they asked me to do like hybrid courses, and I was like, oh, but I want to do stuff on Blackboard. And that was like I think it was like 2014. They like first pitched it to me. And I was like, oh, I didn't feel comfortable using Blackboard. And like part of the reason I didn't want to do it was because of like the intellectual property stuff, right?
Mhm.
And I'm always like, I, you
Giving
know,
her
I'm like literally always thinking about like, oh, that's my stuff. I don't want to share my stuff. But as a teacher and as an admin, you kind of have to share what
I
you
was
do,
just gonna say
right?
that's like
Like
our golden rule.
like there's no reinvention of the wheel. I will say, like, ultimately, like, by the time I, like, transitioned from teaching to like being a lawyer, I had like modules that people were using for their online courses, right?
Mhm.
They brought me along, but it took me
Yeah,
a little while,
yeah,
and maybe it's like the stubbornness of like growing up in a time when like we didn't always get to use computers. Like, I wasn't using a computer from like the age of 5. Like, I had
yeah.
my first computer as like a 12-year-old. So it's like
Mhm.
having to do like just having to make those transitions. So how do you navigate sharing resources, sharing experiences, so like people can avoid, or like, oh no, like we should, like, everybody should be doing this in class. Like, how do you guys kind of like determine that?
Well, as the old adage says, sharing is caring, right? Listen, it comes in two parts, right? There are going to be some people that are going to have the mindset of, listen, I had to do it, you got to do it too, and
Mhm.
but really, what is that worth, and who is that helping? Is kind of the
Mhm.
advice that I was given when this kind of mindset came about. Like,
Yeah.
who are you helping? Our clients are the children, our clients are the kids. So by you sharing something that has been successful, it's not going to help just your students, but it's going to help someone else's students.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to take it as, a pat on the back, like somebody wants my
Mhm.
stuff, but it's also realizing that it is that kind of give and take.
Mhm.
As I mentioned, like from my newest teacher to my most veteran, I'm constantly sharing things via email. Look what I found. I tried this.
Mhm.
Look at this. Or I think you could use this, or this might be useful.
Mhm.
I just, or I often, and I always do, I have, two new teachers now, and I literally share my quote unquote flash drive for teaching, like every
Mhm.
file, every document, use it or not. I'm not saying my way is the best way or the perfect way, because it's not. It's just what's really worked for me and what I think
Mhm.
could be helpful to you. Maybe you're stuck on an idea, or maybe you're not sure how to start something, or how to finish, or how to approach something. But then being able to refer back to whatever it is, and again, it comes to the idea of leading by example, and
Yeah.
modeling that. So if I'm your lead educator and I'm not sharing something, or I'm not really
Mhm.
putting ideas out there, then what am I doing, right?
Yeah.
So just by opening that platform and that floor for them, leads them to be more inclined to share with each other. And just having the conversations with them as well, like, oh my gosh, you just did this, is amazing. And it's not fair
Mhm.
that I'm the only one that gets to see this. You should really
Yeah.
share this with everybody else.
Mhm.
And kind of getting them over that hump of, of just sharing their stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's tricky because people are very private, or they don't really want to, or maybe they're just self-conscious of themselves and their work.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
always encouraging them to do that. So we have shared files, we have shared documents. Like, it's just making it accessible for them and just showing them that it's not about you at the end of the day. Yes, it is partly, but it's really for the kids and for their learning experience at the end of the
No,
day.
I think that's really important. And I love the analogy that you made about like the kids being the clients, because then it's like oh, like if I'm withholding, like I'm actually withholding from a potentially a student not, getting what they need and not being able to like have the best outcomes, right? And I guess like to me, like I'm like, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking there's really no rhyme or reason to be like super competitive, even, because like you're gonna need the same amount of teachers because the kids are gonna be there,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
really, and even like with being like self-conscious, it's like teaching is so much trial and error. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I first started out, like scrapping a syllabus, like after like 2 weeks, because I was like, oh, you got like we got to start like way back there, or no, this is too easy for you. We're gonna like we'll knock, where you're like knocking through stuff, quicker than you thought you were going to, because kids are just smarter, like they're picking it up that semester or that school year. So I think like understanding like you have to adjust is so important. And that also I think factors, just like, I've had like 85 jobs, so like
They say, I've read somewhere that teachers make more decisions than a brain surgeon in any given day. And I believe
Mhm,
that wholeheartedly, because it's not like any other position where you're dealing with a specific group of people on any given day.
mhm,
Where like, okay, I'm writing this email, I'm going to have a meeting with this group. And it's like you have 20 to 30 people in front of you that all need 20 to 30 different things. And you have to do
mhm,
that 3-5 times a day, and then not
mhm,
to mention all the in-between stuff. And it's like, why are you standing here? Go sit down. What do you need? What? Raise your hand. Like you just
mhm, mhm. Don't
constantly
eat
like
that, like.
bobbing and weaving. I don't know. And so you just leave just mentally exhausted. And that's something that also that I share with my teachers as well. Like you can never forget where you came from, right? Whether that
Mhm,
be in your personal life or even in this role. Like I let them know, like, guys, April is a long year. Like I know what it's like.
mhm,
So,
mhm.
just letting them realize that you're in the trenches with them and you're
Yeah.
not really like higher than anybody else. Like ultimately, yes, I'm supervising them, but like I'm doing the same thing they're doing. I gotta get grades done. I have to, make assignments and do lesson plans and all these things. And it's just like,
Mhm.
oh my goodness, today should have been Friday, like, and it's only Tuesday, but it's just fun to, just have that banter back and forth and just kind of bring it down to earth.
Mhm. No,
So,
I mean, that sounds right. And so like now I really want to segue, because like it sounds like you are a very busy woman. So like what do you do for fun? Like how do you
oh
hold it
my
together?
I don't know.
Should we talk
Just
about how your kids are in like 85 different activities?
activities. Yeah, listen, they live their best lives. And I'm blessed in that regard
Mhm.
because as a family, we're able to provide that to our kids,
Mhm.
like me and my husband were able to do that. Where we grew up, it was like, what? You're gonna play basketball? Well, then you need to get a ride, or you're gonna figure that out, or no, you ain't going.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and it goes both ways, where they're able to do a lot, and sometimes it is too much, and that is
Mhm.
very taxing on us as a family. But what it comes down to is, are they having fun? They're enjoying themselves. But that mental load, let me tell you, is as a mom, is a lot. But it comes down to something that we talked about pre-video, like compartmentalizing things. Like
Yeah.
I know when I'm at work, I have like that tunnel vision. I'm hyper focused there. I know my kids are okay because they're at school, unless I kind of get that phone call. But then when I'm at home, I'm locked in at home. It's
Mhm.
craziness screaming in the background. Ah, G, pónselo, por favor. Ok, pero pónselo porque yo voy a estar aquí como 10 minutos más y tenemos que terminar, por favor. Gracias. Mira, él te lo va a poner. Mira, mira. And
guys, just so you know, like, you see how calm she was? That's how she is, like, when she's not on camera. Because sometimes, like, I'm in the room with her, and I'm like, she's so good. Because, like, I'm like, these children, I just lock them in a room.
sometimes I want to go. But compartmentalizing, and then, you know, just we have a shared calendar where, like, I can show anybody and they're like, what the heck? Like, there's like 52 things on any given day, and just kind of prioritizing what needs to come 1st, what can we work on, or whatever. Like, it's a lot, I'm not gonna lie.
But like I bet it's
drive to work and I'm thinking about work, and then I drive home and I'm thinking about home, and what do I gotta do, and when am I gonna
who I gotta pick up first?
Yeah. Am I gonna get there in time? And we only got 20 minutes. Let's go, you know, like.
No, it's like so funny, but like I have to say, like, we got to see one of your sons in a musical recently, and he was in Beauty and the Beast. Like, for me, it's like when I saw him, you know, like, he's amazing. He's always like, he's like our little gonna be everything human. Like, we expect him to do everything. But what for me, it's like, I imagine that, like, that's what makes it worth it, right? Like, you know, like, yes, like, sometimes it's taxing, but, you know, seeing how happy your children are when they're, you know, doing a part or playing soccer or playing baseball, and really enjoying themselves and connecting with other kids, right? But like, talk about, like, I know how I felt when I saw, and we keep calling him, you know, like, the bigger one, the younger one, but they actually know Garrison. And so, like, Garrison, he, like, to me, he's just such an incredible kid. Like, he's been singing ever since I can remember, right?
Yep.
And we had the privilege of watching him be a little rock star in his school's production of Beauty and the Beast. What was that, last week? It feels so long ago. Was it last week?
Last week. He's giving me the signal over here, like.
He's like, what? He wants to do a cameo? Is that what it is?
No, he wants to hide under a rock. He likes to be the showman, but not be spoken about.
I guess he doesn't want to hear when people are talking about him. You know, he's like, can you do that when I'm not here? But what was that like? Like, seeing him. That was one of his like first like major productions, right? What was that like for you?
He did a couple church things, but this was probably the biggest role he's had for sure. I mean, what else is there to feel besides being prideful, right? Like, I'll do that. Where do you get that from? But, you know, just being able to, again, provide him with those opportunities, you know, it comes with the sacrifices, like going to practice every day and who's picking you up, but, you know, and highlighting his lines or playing the songs while we're in the car. But he really did that all on his own. He really has just like a natural talent, not because I'm his mom, but just his ability to memorize stuff and just sing and be on key and in tune. And he like memorizes the other people's lines. Like, no, you're supposed to say this. You know, like, it's just, he just has like the brain for that. It's pretty neat, just to see it come to fruition.
Yeah, no, it's pretty awesome. What for me, like, what was really amazing was moments when he was on the stage and I couldn't tell, like, I was like, wait, like, is he acting or did that person really elbow him in the face? Because he was like just, he was so on cue with everything, you know, where you were like, wait, like, do I need to go and get him off that stage? They talking about baby. But I want to give a shout out to your husband though, because like he is Mr. trying to do the most all the time.
Mhm.
Like I remember when we were younger. I guess he really started when you were 18, right? Like I remember that first birthday party and we were like, wow, this is amazing. And because like we're all like 18-year-old brokies, we don't know nothing about
Mhm.
that life, right? But it was like, hey Jackson.
Saluda.
Hello.
Hi.
All right. ¿Te vas a ir allá o te vas a sentar aquí?
Yeah.
Ok, so vete, bye.
Hi,
He's too funny. Hey, we were due for a cameo. I'm surprised it
Yes.
took him that long.
Yeah. Me too, actually.
But like, but what I really loved about you guys' relationship was how like it always felt like he was trying to like just like express his love to you like in these like explosive ways all the time, to the point where we were kind of like, yo, when's he gonna get tired? And I have to say, it's been 22 years. And I think he is just getting started. And so like talk about like how having, just like a good partner in all of what you're doing, like having aligned values has helped you. Hi Garrison.
You're coming unhinged now.
They've taken over. You know what? I knew
Yes.
I knew they were gonna take over your stuff when you sent me that photo. When you sent me that photo, I was like, "Oh, these children are gonna be all up in her stuff." So we just gotta.
I mean, it's about supporting each other ultimately, and realizing that like in the relationship, they say it's 50-50, but is it ever really?
No.
Sometimes it's 70-30, maybe it's 90-10. Lo puedes poner para atrás, okay? But kind of just supporting each other's dreams and helping to fulfill those. Like even right now, him being away, and I'm kind of flying, not kind of, but flying solo with help people like that are on the screen. But I don't know, just supporting each other and making sacrifices.
Yeah. I feel like at every season, like, and I think that's what I've admired about you guys is like, no matter how the ratio is, it's like you manage even like, and like, we're not trying to like say like they have the perfect situation, because nobody has like a perfect life, but it's like even on like the worst times, like they still manage to work it out and like keep it together. And so like, that's why I'm highlighting it. But, I think I'm gonna let you escape from this live, girl. But I just want to say thank you so much. I want to say thank you so much for giving me almost an hour of your Saturday. I know it's a sacrifice because like I ain't got no children. I ain't got no husband. I got to like, work out before this, and so like kind of like recognizing that like, like you made a sacrifice by being here. So I just want to like thank you for like showing up and being awesome. And, because it's hard out here. It's hard out here, even for a pimp, and so I just want to thank you. I want to thank you. Are there any like last words you want to tell to like moms and either moms or professionals that are thinking about becoming moms, like like if like what were like 3 things you wish you knew going in, that you would want to like tell somebody now?
Maybe not things that I wish I knew, but always, just kind of sticking to your goal, sticking to your vision, never giving up. Realizing that even for myself, realizing that you're never going to be perfect in any area. Sometimes things have to fall by the wayside, and you're never going to be the perfect wife or the perfect professional or the perfect mom. It's not like that trifecta. Something's going to give at any given point. And just kind of finding the balance for yourself and whatever that looks like. Anything that's in your vision and in your pathway, it's going to be hard. Nothing's ever going to be easy, right? If it were, then what are we all doing here? We could be, but just kind of sticking to that and applying yourself in whatever that looks like. And it's possible, it's hard being a mom, being a wife, and having a profession, it really is. There's no way to put it any more frankly, but just giving your best. And a lot of times people always ask, how do you do all of this? How do you do it all? You're like super this, you're super mom, you're super, and it's just like I mentioned, you compartmentalize. I'm at work. When I'm at work, I'm doing my work. I'm momming when I'm, it's just, you have to find the time for everything, and also finding time for yourself, which I never have. But just finding those moments to recharge, whether that is, getting your nails done or being allowed to sleep in, whatever that looks like. It's not going to be an extravagant trip to Dubai because you got kids, but just finding those moments for yourself and just balance. That's all it really comes down to.
Yeah. No. Well,
easy, but it's always worth it.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by today. You were actually the first person that I'm interviewing for this. So, and I did not prepare. I was like, but I told myself, I was like, you have to I gave myself parameters. So, but thank you so much for opening your life to us. And, I know people are going to be inspired, because, I don't know, I like showing people that you don't expect to see in certain spaces and certain roles. Like, to me, people need to see that, because we didn't see a lot of that when we were kids. It was like we were literally like driving blind. Like, we both did things that nobody else in our family had done. So pioneers too. So here's to all the pioneers. You actually get to live until you're 40. We can't tell you beyond that what's going to happen, but we can tell you can make it to 40 and still look good. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. We are going to be back here live next week with our wellness mom. And tell me what you thought of the episode. Rip me apart. I already told you guys, don't judge my friend because of me. Just deal with me. Have a good one, guys.
Bye, Aubrey. Thank